The gods, mighty, powerful, and awe-inspiring individuals that many worship and revere, love and respect. But having this reverence, if you wish, for your gods does not mean automatically that the gods are greater than you and I. This video, in fact, is here to discuss the hierarchy of life, and more importantly, the illusion of the hierarchy of life. That is to say that the gods are neither greater nor lesser than we are, and that we are neither lesser nor greater than they. In fact, all life in Norse and Britannic paganism should and is by many viewed as equal. All life has value, and all things, even the inanimate, are life. And as mentioned, today's video is my way of trying to show you how that hierarchy is an illusion, and as such show you why what I worship is life itself, not the gods, but life, which of course includes the gods within it, but not to exclusivity or even to a higher level than any other form of life. Now, this does not mean that you cannot worship, revere, love and respect your gods. It is a personal choice. Paganism as a whole is a set of individuals with a common belief system, but their own unique way of enacting those beliefs. And if you choose to worship your gods, you are like many others. But there are also others who choose not to worship the gods, who choose not to pray and to revere them. Neither one are wrong or right. Instead, what we share is a respect for our gods, a respect for their deeds, a respect for their sacrifices, and a respect for the ways in which they can inspire us to have greater potential than what we are born with. And so let's begin with the runes. The runes themselves, in essence, are a guide or a map to our pathway of life. Ultimately, when interpreted, they can show, both on the small scale and the grand, almost cosmological scale, progression of fate and the development of self, ultimately towards the desired end point of Dagas. Ultimately, the runes show us the currents of fate as they flow through the cosmos. They allow us to, at least to a level which we are capable of, to understand those fates and to understand what those fates are doing. We can see clearly through the runes the processes involved in the conversion of possibilities into actualities. That is the fulfillment of fate, and we see that throughout life. For every action there is a reaction, and that is on a very small scale the fulfillment of fate. Now, I mentioned just a moment ago that the runes are a guide or a map to essentially our life path, but as an analogue to that, they are also thus a pathway to our life learning. They can guide us on how to observe, perceive, or even experience certain events, and how to take from that a learning experience that develops within us a deeper knowledge that can ultimately then lead to wisdom. Wisdom is the application of knowledge, the application of knowledge gained from past experiences to predict future experiences. Ultimately, if you have oneness, which is in essence absolute wisdom, then nothing will ever take you by surprise. You will always be able to predict any event, even if you have never even experienced anything like it. because the parallels which you will be able to draw from whatever experiences you do have will allow you to predict everything with complete clarity and accuracy. This being the very thing that Odin sacrificed his own eye for. Yet a knowledge of fate is not enough, because fate, or at least destiny, is unavoidable. Knowledge of what will happen doesn't change what will happen. What will be, will be. And so, this is why Odin, despite knowing of his death to Fenrir in Ragnarok, will die regardless to the jaws of Fenrir despite his best efforts, but like a true Viking, he says fuck it, and will fight to the end anyway. However, the significance of this is that it shows that the gods themselves, even with ultimate wisdom, are affected by fate and destiny just as much as we are. And so by extension of this, anything we learn from the runes not only applies to ourselves, but to the gods also. For the purposes of this discussion, we will be using the 5 runes of Tiraz, Berkano, Ewas, Manas, and Laguz. Sequential runes all found within the last and third ayat of the Eldar Fuvok script. As mentioned earlier, the runes are a pathway to our learning. And so as we progress through the runes, as we move from the first to the second and to the third ayat, right up to the last and final rune of the Gas, we see a sequential and progressive development of learning, knowledge and understanding. Within the 5 runes I've mentioned, these are the first 5 runes of the third ayat, and deal specifically with the beginning of the development of a higher state of consciousness, ultimately a higher path of learning that is somewhat abstract in concept. As a result, it is somewhat difficult to understand, but I will guide you through these runes one by one, and we will see how a hierarchy of life is actually an illusion. An illusion that as one develops a higher level of understanding is dissolved and is required to dissolve for the progression of that individual to their final state. So let us begin firstly with Tiraz. This is the first rune of the third ayat. During the first and second ayat, we are in essence becoming the master of self, culminating in the rune Sorelu, which represents self-victory. It is with this self-victory that we gain a true understanding of our internal power, and it is as our foundation that we become able to take ourselves to the next level, or indeed in this case the next role. The next role is the sacrifice of self for whole, for the understanding that brings, the understanding that there is no separation between self and others, but also the understanding gained from now being able to access fully the Mimi, our ancestral memory. When we mentioned earlier the story of Odin sacrificing his eye for true and absolute wisdom, he did this at the well of Mimir. There is no coincidence that our memory, our ancestral memory, is called Mimi. It is after Mimir, and it is through our ancestral memories and our connection with them that we gain true wisdom. The combination of our individual experiences, but those also of those who have come before, for whom the rune Tiraz is connected to. Tyr made a sacrifice of his hand, sacrifice to Fenrir, to destruction if you wish, and the spirit of destruction to bring order to the untamed, chaotic spirit of Fenrir. Tyr had an understanding that his sacrifice of self was for the whole. And it is like Tyr that we must do the same to begin our higher learning in a conscious manner. We move away from the duality of self and other, and move away from the service of self and the mastery of self to the service of the whole. It is only when we do so that the true connection between ourselves and everything around us can begin to grow. Tiwaz represents as a rune the beginning of this movement into this sacrifice and into this understanding, and the beginning of the new learning processes that become available to us at this point. The newly attained wisdom that goes deeper and more profound than ever before, than ever we could have hoped to ever achieve by ourselves. By connecting with the other, we become greater than what we could as individuals. But all power comes with sacrifice, and knowledge is power. And so we find ourselves moving away from the concept of self and other. It is now that we progress into the rune of Bekano. Bekano is the rune that represents the process of dissolution, of duality, of the boundaries between ourselves and other. This process is progressive as our connections to others grow, as we begin to nurture the sense of other and let go of the concept of self. It is then that we see the illusion of duality receding. It is this that is Bekana. And as you progress within the process of dissolving the boundaries, each time a barrier is removed between self and other, a connection forms. And in this connection, there is an embodiment of trust. A kinship or a bond forms that is a recognition of your sacrifice. This is Awaz, the recognition of the dissolution of the boundaries between you and that around you. And as mentioned, the process of dissolution is progressive, so is the recognition, and so is the kinship formed. And it is through the kinships that we form between ourself and other, through our progressive life experiences, where then our realization dissolves barriers, dispels the illusion of duality. It is then that we see there is no difference within the separate components of the cosmos itself. It is then when we make our true step towards oneness, and you reach a state of mastery. This time the mastery of Manaz is not only the mastery of self, but also the mastery of your understanding of other. Your mastery of the understanding of the connective processes between you and everything else. And it is at this point, once you have mastered self, once you have mastered your own identity and soul path, once you have mastered other and the connection with other, and used it for the dissolution of division and the dispelling of the illusion of duality, then you will flow with fate itself, without resistance or unnecessary interaction. You will become part of the whole system of life, and it is this that is Lagus. Now, it is these 5 runes that I've briefly taken you through, guys, that form the backbone of the progressive element of the third ayat of runes, and it is they that are considered with developing a higher state of learning, but also with your final progression of understanding. It is by looking at these runes that it becomes clear that the hierarchy of life, that is a division in its own sense, a division based upon power, greatness, or any form of recognition, is an illusion. It is a necessary one, as it acts as a spectrum of separation. By having individual components within the system, fate is able to achieve the conversion of as many possibilities into actualities as possible. This is seemingly the role of fate, to fulfill potentials. But once you have gained a mastery of self, you will have gained a completeness in your own success, and you will have reached your potential and possibly gone even beyond it. But you will have satisfied fate, and so then your role is then to shed the identity of self and to sacrifice yourself for the system as a whole. When you reach this state of sacrifice, clearly the path towards Logos is not only progressive but exponential in the development of your higher learning, and it is with a greater state of mind that then you become able to dissolve and dispel the boundaries between you and other, and of course the illusion that exists. Importantly then, this shows that as the gods are like we, ruled by fate and destiny, that they are part of the same system that we are. And so the hierarchy of life that places gods above ourselves is in essence a division of self and other. And so the gods in our initial stages of learning, as we strive to seek an understanding and mastery of ourselves, are a necessity that inspires us to achieve as they achieve, to better ourselves in their image. But once we have gained a mastery of self, that division and the barrier that the division creates between ourselves and the gods, between self and other, must be brought down. And so the hierarchy of life, as mentioned before, is an illusion, and a necessary one at that, but it is also a division that must, when your mind is ready, be brought down. And so guys, I hope I've put my points forward to allow you to understand the world in the way that I see it, and the reason why I worship life itself, why I choose not to revere the gods, why I love them perhaps, why I respect them and admire them, but why I do not revere them. I endeavour to only teach, I do not preach, and I encourage you to have your own mind, to have your own beliefs and your own thoughts, that perhaps I've provoked a deeper understanding within yourself. Even if it comes to a different conclusion, I hope I provoke some kind of well-placed thought pathways. Of course, we could take this discussion further, guys, but we'll save this for another video if there's enough interest in it, discussing the fact that men are born of Ymir. Ymir was the father of not only the Jotun, but of the dwarfs and elves also, all of which are considered to be either gods or godlike beings in their own sense. And so, as they are fathered by the same being as ourselves, wow, you can see how that is worthy of discussion. Anyway guys, it's been a long video, and if you've made it this far, well done, because I'm tired myself and I'm the one doing the talking, not alone doing the listening and trying to understand what I'm trying to say. So I thank you for being so patient, and I wish you a farewell, a ta-ta, and a goodbye for now. Thank you. Bye bye.